Uh, okay, that's what I like to hear. And the speaker view, okay. And I'll remind all of y'all to mute until you're going to contribute to the discussion. That way, doorbells ringing, toilets flushing, etc., won't be on the video. Let's see. And I am recording. Okay. So we're going to have four talks today, and the gospel is a bit intricate, and so I decided to skip the psalm and do one on the first reading, one on the second reading, and then two on the gospel after we take our break. So let's see. Does anybody want to read the first reading from Genesis? Oh, I see Jan is here. Welcome, welcome. From the lectionary version. Mike, okay. I'll let you come up and sit down here. And if you want to put that, should we put that lapel mic on? I need a better way to get in. Just somebody doesn't break their neck. Okay, so while he's reading, we'll jot down any thoughts and images that come to us. Let's see.
A reading from the book of Genesis. The Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a suitable partner for him." So the Lord God formed out of the ground various wild animals and various birds of the air. And he brought them to the man to see what he would call them. Whatever the man called each of them would be its name. The man gave names to all the cattle, all the birds of the air, and all wild animals. But none proved to be the suitable partner for the man. So the Lord God cast a deep sleep on the man, and while he was asleep, he took out one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. The Lord God then built up into a woman the rib that he had taken from the man. When he brought her to the man said, "This one at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called woman, for out of her man, this one has been taken. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and clings to his wife, and the two of them become one flesh." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, let's see. What are some of the thoughts and images that came to us while Mike was reading? Cleave to his wife. You need to unmute yourself, Patricia.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, we can hear you now. No, you're muted again. You're muted again. We're not hearing. Now you're unmuted.
Okay. Is that good?
No, that's what.
Okay. And the two of them become one flesh.
And the two of them become one flesh. Okay. Mike, brother Mike, yeah.
This one at last.
This one at last. Anyone else? Okay, well, we're a small group today, but I appreciate everyone who jumps in there. So I had a conversation a few decades ago, and someone told me, I want to read the Bible in the order in which it was written. I know the books are in different order. And I said, that's going to be complicated. Genesis chapter 1 was written in 500 BC, and Genesis chapter 2 was written in 900 BC, and there was an awful lot in between those. So maybe one day I'll publish a version of the Bible that's in scholarly chronological order as good as we can guess. And the fact is, we don't know when a lot of it was written. So the author, the traditional author of the Pentateuch, which means 5 volumes in Greek, or Torah, which means instruction in Hebrew, is Moses. He's dated about 1300 BC. Most scholars agree that Mosaic authorship is a gross oversimplification historically. Here's a Catholic gross oversimplification. Baltimore Catechism. Is the Mass that we have today the same as the Mass that was given to us by Jesus Christ? Answer: yes, the Mass that we have today is the same as the Mass that was given to us by Jesus Christ. That's essentially correct, but it's grossly oversimplified because all those who learned from that catechism wanted to know why Vatican II was reforming the Mass, since the one we had was exactly the one that was given to us by Jesus Christ. Okay, most scholars date the age of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to about 1800 BC. The Torah Pentateuch is a compilation of written and oral sources. There were no significant written sources until Israel had a permanent king with a court and scribes. That is about the time of David, the year 1000. It was similar to the Aboriginal culture in Australia before the Europeans arrived. They just didn't do much reading and writing. Most of the writing of the Torah Pentateuch took place sometime between 900 and 500 BC. The final school of writers or editors is called the P-source, because most of the authors who did the final compilation had priestly concerns. The scholars call the original author of the section we read today J. He uses the name Yahweh, spelled with a J in German, Yahweh, and German scholars came up with this theory. If Americans or Brits had come up with it, it would be the Y source, but it was a German theory, so it's the J source. He uses the name Yahweh for the deity even before the name is revealed to Moses. In Exodus 3, Yahweh, which comes across as the Lord with all capitals in most Bibles, the Lord reveals his name to Moses. J, however, portrays Adam, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses as all worshipers of the Lord, Yahweh, before the name is revealed to humanity.
Okay, now you're okay. Bye.
Okay, somebody's coming through. It sounds like Marie. Okay, let's see. This is what scholars call an anachronism, a piece of historical knowledge placed in an incorrect time. A modern anachronism at Thanksgiving, most of us Americans think about our ancestors, the Pilgrim, and how they, with the help of the Indians, they learned to hunt in the local woods and learned what crops would grow and managed to survive the harsh winter. And they gave thanks to God. And so we tell that story now about our ancestors on Thanksgiving. Now, historically, if my ancestors had been there, they would not have been welcome. In fact, they would have probably been in the stocks. The original Pilgrims were Puritans. They got the name Puritan because they wanted to purify the Church of England. And what did they want to purify it of? Of anything Catholic. And as far as they were concerned, King Henry and his followers were too Catholic. They needed a church that was more pure. So they called them Puritans. So my ancestors would not have been welcome at that first Thanksgiving. But I learned the story of Thanksgiving as a child in Catholic school, and at least in the early grades, they didn't tell us how unwelcome our ancestors would have been. So we thought of those pilgrims as our ancestors. The anachronistic idea that we are all pilgrims is an attempt to socialize everyone into one people. Theology and sociology. So Jay's main point was not historical. He wasn't troubled by anachronisms. If someone had pointed out the historical thing of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob not knowing the name Yahweh, the Lord, he would not have been bothered or impressed at all. His point was that the God who rescued Israel from slavery was one that their ancestors had worshiped, one that mixed multitude that came out of Egypt, joined by many others along the way, that this mixed multitude now ruled by the house of David, they are all the people of the Lord. They are all Yahweh's people. So we have two stories of creation. Genesis 1 represents the P tradition, Genesis 2 mostly the J tradition. The order of events is different in the two stories, and the scope of the stories are also different. The first creation story divides creation into 6 days. And the Creator begins by making order out of chaos, beginning by separating light from darkness. In the beginning, everything was kind of gray. Dark and light were all mixed together, and so he separates the light from the darkness and creates day and night. Now, we point out that the sun and stars aren't created till later, but that wouldn't bother him. Creation is effortless. The Creator gives a command, let there be light, and there was light. And after that, various creatures are created on various days, plants, birds, fish, wild animals, domestic animals. And on the 6th day, human beings are created, male and female, they are created on the 6th day. Humanity, male and female, is portrayed as the pinnacle of creation. They are made in the image of God. So his purpose is to stress that human beings have a special dignity. We relate to God. That's something that no other animal does. I heard a rabbi say the main difference between humans and other animals, we thank God for our food before we eat it. I had never put it that way, but that's a pretty good theological definition of human beings. The second creation story comes from a simpler time. Jay did not worry about where the world itself came from. He just took for granted that the world was here. And he begins his story with the Creator planting a garden. Now, the Creator of Genesis 1 would have just said, let there be a garden, and there would have been a garden. But Jay is more anthropomorphic. He portrays anthropos, human, morphe is form. He portrays God using more vivid human imageries. It's impossible to say one word about God without being anthropomorphic, just because of human languages. But some writers are more anthropomorphic than others. Jay's God walks in the garden in the cool of the evening, and Adam and Eve hear his steps, and so on. You would never get anything like that from the P tradition. He then, after he makes the garden, after he plants it, he puts Ha-Adam into the garden, and he forms him from the clay of the earth, puts him in the garden. And so the image is that of a potter. But the human is lonely. So the Creator starts to find is going to find a suitable partner for him, or the Hebrew is a helper like himself. More on that later. So the creator forms, again, it's the image of a potter doing one thing, all of these creatures, bringing them to the man to see what he's going to call them. Cow, wolf, dog, and so on, whatever the man calls it. But there's no suitable partner for the man. So under the mystery of deep sleep, the human being is put to sleep. And instead of making something more from clay, like everything else has been made, he takes a bone from the man's side and some of his flesh and seals it back up. And out of that, he forms the woman. And what was the expression that this one at last, when the man wakes up, he says, "You finally got it right, Lord God." Yes, this is the one. And our J author loves loves puns, and this one works mainly in Hebrew. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of her man. Woman is ish-sha. There's two sh sounds, ish-sha, because she was taken out of her man, isha. That only has one sh sound in it. So she's isha because she was taken from isha. And there's a text critical problem there. The Hebrew doesn't actually have her man. It just says was taken from man. She will be called Isha because she was taken from Ish. And I'm not sure what the revised edition of the New American does with it, but the Greek translation says her man, and the Jewish Targum to Genesis says her man. So these writers, they had Hebrew that said her man. And it's just one letter difference. You get that final H on the end and it makes it Isha instead of Ish. And so I agree with the New American that the H probably fell out. Let's see. So the purpose, the story explains, and we'll use air quotes for explains, in a non-scientific, non-historical way, why men and women are so attracted to each other. Originally, they were one being, the human. Now they are two, and they long to be one again. There are differences in the order of creation. Rationalists have pointed out what they regard as contradictions in the sequence of the two events. But the goal in the first story, you have male and female. No, in the first story, you get plants and then all the different kind of animals and finally human beings. In the second story, you have this human being, and scholars debate whether it's a male human being or whether it's androgynous, male and female combined. I think the imagery is male, but that just might be my chauvinistic bias. A lot of feminists will argue that it was an androgynous being. And then come all the different kinds of animals, and then finally comes the female. So the order is very different in the two stories. But the error of the rationalists is the same as the error of the fundamentalists. They fail to recognize the literary genre of each story. They fail to appreciate the artistic purpose and the symbolic value of the two stories. One scholar, I forget who it was, said that many people read the daily newspaper with more intelligence than we read the Bible. Because when we pick up the daily paper, we know the degree of accuracy of the numbers in the weather forecast and in the stock reports, that they're different. And we know the difference between a cartoon on the editorial page and Beetle Bailey. And we know a difference between a letter to the editor and a letter to Ann Landers, and between an editorial and a news story. So we take all that into account, whereas often we just open the Bible and say, well, all this is just, it's all straight history or whatever. A helper like him or a suitable partner for him is not a lowly title. Help is something that God does for Israel. I searched and found a bunch of examples, but here's Deuteronomy 33:29 in the New American Revised Version. Happy are you, blessed are you, Israel, who is like you, a people delivered by the Lord, your help and shield. So the fact that the Lord is our help and our shield, that doesn't mean he's our flunky. And the same thing that when the woman is a helper for her man, that doesn't mean she's a flunky. It can be a very exalted title. Now, the liturgical context, the reading is chosen to go with today's gospel in the controversy about divorce, which will be there. Jesus refers to the story of creation. So I'm going to stop here and let's see. Does somebody want to read from another translation? Oh, okay, come. Mary Ellen's going to come and read the Douay. And if you project, I won't bother you with the microphone. I think we can all hear you here. Oh. So just sit right there and go ahead and start reading and go ahead and project. And if you're not doing good enough, I'll move this closer.
And the Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. Let us make him a help like unto himself. And the Lord God, having formed out of the ground all the beasts of the earth and the fowls of the air, brought them to Adam to see that what he would call them. For whatsoever Adam called any living creature, the same is its name. And Adam called all the beasts by their names, and all the fowls of the air, and all the cattle of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helper like himself. Then the Lord God cast a deep sleep upon Adam. And when he was fast asleep, he took one of his ribs and filled up flesh for it. And the Lord God built the rib which he took from Adam into a woman and brought her to Adam. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Wherefore a man shall leave father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall be two in one flesh.
Thank you. To read the Douay Bible well, you have to be able to read at the 12th grade level. There are many people with PhDs who cannot read at the 12th grade level. You have to be able to read the King James and Shakespeare fluently and with expression to read at the 12th grade level. To give you an example, the Good News version is written so that if you can read at the 4th grade level, you can read it. It's made for people that English is their second language. And most of our modern Bibles, like the New American, if you can read at the 8th grade level, you can read it. So thanks for that. I'm going to do a check here. I've got my Bible program. Oh, I thought it was running. I must have shut it down. I'm starting it up again. But let's see, I'm set for let's see, let's do NAB and okay, yes. You will notice that the old translations, like the King James and the Douay, they take Ha-Adam, the human being, as a name. And so he's called, the human being is given the name Adam, even in Genesis 2. In most contemporary Bibles, recent translations, it's called the man or the human. And the first named person in the New American Bible is Eve, because the story says that she gave birth to Cain, and she was called Eve, Hawa, because she's the mother of all of the living, Haye. The name Adam first appears in the New American Bible in chapter 4, verse 25 of Genesis. So in our modern Bibles, Eve is the first named person. That was the main thing that came to me as I was hearing the Bible of my youth. Any other questions, comments, or observations at this point? Okay, Jan.
In verse 24, it says, therefore, a man leaves his father and his mother, and clings to his wife. Well, they had no father or mother. Did they know that that's what they would become, a father and a mother?
Well, okay, so the question is, therefore a man leaves father and mother and clings to his wife. And the question is, well, did Adam and Eve, they didn't have fathers and mothers. So did they know this? But notice that this is not a comment either of Adam or of Eve. I'm gonna leave my father and mother and now go with this woman. Rather, it's a comment of the narrator. And so he's talking about his own day in probably 900 BC. Hey, y'all, if you want to know why in our patriarchal society, a man leaves his father and mother and clings to his wife and they start a new family, this is how it all got started. So it's a narrator's aside to the reader. But it's an excellent question. Okay, well, we've gone about a half an hour, so I'm going to stop the recording here. Stop, where is it? Stop recording.